The freezing December rain lashed the windows of the 50th floor of Moretti Industries, transforming the view of New York into a gray and melancholic blur. It was 6 in the evening on Christmas Eve, and the office was a desert. Everyone had already left. The accounting team, the interns, even the cleaning staff. Everyone, except me, and him. Dante Moretti. I could hear the sound of his footsteps in the next room. Heavy. Irritated. The sound of someone pacing back and forth like a caged lion. Working as Dante's personal assistant for 2 years had taught me 3 things. He was brilliant at business, ruthless with enemies, and carried a silent grief that made his gray eyes almost unbearable to look at for too long. He never smiled. In 2 years, I had never seen his teeth appear in anything other than a sneer of contempt or a predatory smile before closing a deal. Elena. His voice came, deep and hoarse, through the ajar door. I jumped up, smoothing my skirt. Yes, Mr. Moretti? I entered the room. He was standing before the glass wall, a broad and imposing silhouette against the storm outside. He was holding a glass of whiskey, his knuckles white from gripping it so hard. The merger files with Russo Corporation. Where are they? I sent them to your secure email an hour ago, sir. And I left a physical copy in your folder. He turned. Dante was devastatingly handsome, in a way that seemed dangerous. Black hair combed back, a jaw that looked carved from marble, and that aura of power that made the air seem thin around him. Right, he murmured, passing a hand over his face. He looked exhausted. Go home, Elena. It's Christmas. Why are you still here? Because I have no one waiting for me, I thought. And because the idea of leaving you alone in this huge building hurts me more than I should admit. I was just finishing organizing the January schedule, I lied. I'm going to leave for my dinner break and then go home. Don't come back, he ordered, turning to the window again. I don't want to see anyone here when I leave. I grabbed my coat and went down to the street. The rain had turned into dirty, wet snow. I didn't have much money, the salary was good, but my mother's medical debt, before she passed away, consumed almost everything. Christmas would be lonely and cheap in my apartment in Brooklyn. To escape the cold, I entered the first open shop I saw, the Chest of the Past, a cramped thrift store smelling of mothballs and old books on 42nd Street. Mrs. Higgins, the owner, was dozing behind the counter. I started rummaging through a box of assorted jewelry, $10 each, just to pass the time. There were plastic rings, broken brooches, rusty chains. And then, something shone at the bottom of the box. I pulled out a silver necklace darkened by time. It was heavy, cold in my hand. The pendant wasn't a common jewel. It was an oval medallion, and engraved in the silver was an intricate design, a wolf howling at a crescent moon, holding a dagger between its teeth. My heart skipped a beat. I knew that symbol. I saw it every day. It was on the signet ring Dante wore on the little finger of his left hand. The ring he never took off, which he spun distractedly when he was nervous. The Moretti family crest. But what was this doing in a box of trinkets for $10 in a dirty thrift store? I wiped away the dust with my thumb. On the back of the medallion, almost illegible from where, was a cursive inscription. I narrowed my eyes to read it under the dim light of the shop. For my Sophia. May the wolf always protect your soul. Sophia. I remembered an old newspaper article I found when I was researching him before the job interview. A scandal from 15 years ago. The Moretti tragedy, youngest daughter disappears without a trace. Her name was Sophia. Dante's twin sister. He never spoke of her. No one spoke of her. It was the ghost that haunted the Moretti empire. Taking that, dear? Mrs. Higgins appeared at my side, startling me. Real silver, though it needs a polish. $10. $10 for a piece of my boss's broken soul. I knew it was a terrible idea. I knew crossing the professional line with Dante Moretti was like trying to pet a hungry tiger. He could fire me. He could think I was snooping into his life. But then I remembered his look at the window just now. The absolute loneliness of a man who had the world at his feet, but nothing in his hands. "I'll take it," I said, pulling a crumpled bill from my pocket. "And do you have a small gift box?" 1 hour later, I was back at the office. The building was deadly silent. The corridor lights were off, except for the strip of light coming from Dante's door. I had polished the necklace in the bathroom with a bit of toothpaste and paper towels until the silver shone again. Now, it was inside a simple cardboard box I found in my drawer. I took a deep breath, feeling fear bubble in my stomach, and knocked on the door. "I said not to come back, Elena," his voice came from inside, sharper than before. I entered anyway. He was sitting at the desk now, his head in his hands, the whiskey glass empty. He lifted his head, and the fury in his eyes made me want to retreat. "Sorry, Mr. Moretti," my voice trembled. I just came back to leave this." I walked to the desk and placed the small black box on the polished mahogany, right in front of him. He looked at the box as if it were a bomb. "What is this?" "It's Christmas," I said softly. "I saw this in a shop just now. And, well, I thought it should be with the original owner." Dante didn't move for a long time. The silence stretched to the breaking point. Slowly, with a hand I swear I saw trembling, he extended his fingers and opened the lid. The office light reflected on the polished silver of the medallion. The wolf. The moon. The dagger. The sound that came out of Dante's throat wasn't human. It was a strangled gasp, as if someone had just punched him in the stomach. He picked up the necklace, holding it against the light as if he didn't believe what his eyes were seeing. He turned the medallion over. "Read the inscription." When he raised his eyes to me, the coldness had disappeared. In its place, there was a shock so raw, a pain so violent, that I felt like an intruder. He stood up slowly, coming around the desk, advancing toward me like an approaching storm. I took a step back, hitting my back against the closed door. "Where?" His voice was a terrifying whisper. He stopped inches from me, invading my personal space, the smell of expensive whiskey and danger enveloping me. He was holding the necklace so tightly the silver must have been cutting into his skin. "Where did you find this, Elena?" In a thrift store on 42nd Street, I stammered, my heart beating in my throat. "In a $10 box. I recognized the crest from your ring." "A thrift store," he repeated, the word sounding strange in his mouth. His gray eyes scanned my face, searching for some lie. "Do you have any idea what this is?" I read the inscription, I whispered. "I assume it was your sister's." His jaw locked. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "This necklace," he said, his voice low and lethal, "was on my sister's neck the day she was kidnapped, 15 years ago. The police said it had been melted down. That it would never be found." He raised his hand, and for a second, I thought he was going to touch me. Instead, he slammed his palm against the door, right above my head, pinning me between his body and the wood. "If this was in a thrift store on 42nd Street, he growled, bringing his face close to mine until I could feel the heat of his breath, "it means the person who took her is still in the city." He looked deep into my eyes, and the professional barrier that had existed between us for 2 years crumbled to ashes. "You didn't give me a Christmas gift, Elena," he whispered. "You just started a war." The word war hung in the stagnant air of the office, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, Dante didn't move. He continued pinning me against the door, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his gray eyes sparking with a volatile mix of fury and terrifying hope. I could feel the heat radiating from him, contrasting with the icy chill that had settled in my spine. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, he pulled back. The sudden loss of his proximity made me stagger slightly. Dante ran a hand through his hair, messing up the impeccable style, and for the first time in 2 years, he looked undone. "Get your coat," he ordered, his voice hoarse but controlled again. He was already walking toward his desk, grabbing his car keys and cell phone. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice still shaky. "To that shop." "Now." He stopped and looked at me. The professional mask was back in place, but there were cracks. "You said 42nd Street. The chest of the past. The woman who sold you this, is she still there?" I looked at the watch on my wrist. It was 6:15 when I left. "She closes at 7 on Christmas Eve. We have 20 minutes. Let's go." He didn't wait for the executive elevator. Dante Moretti ran down the emergency stairs, and I had to trot to keep up with him, my heels clicking on the concrete. In the underground parking garage, his car, a black armored German sedan that looked more like a luxury tank, was waiting. He drove like a maniac. The streets of New York were slippery with slush, but Dante weaved through the sparse traffic with surgical precision. The silence inside the car was deafening. I gripped the seatbelt, looking at the medallion he now held in his right hand, pressing it against the steering wheel while driving with his left. "Dante," I said, using his first name without permission for the first time. The risk seemed irrelevant now. "The police, shouldn't we call them?" "The police closed Sophia's case 14 years ago," he said coldly, without taking his eyes off the road. "Declared her dead. Said the body was likely thrown in the Hudson. If I call them now, they'll bury everything in bureaucracy, isolate the evidence, and let the trail go cold." Again. He turned his face to me quickly, his eyes burning with the light of passing headlights. "You said it was in a $10 box. That means whoever sold it didn't know the value. Or was desperate for quick cash. Junkies, street thieves, they don't keep things for 15 years to sell for pennies. Someone was keeping this. And that someone just got rid of it." We arrived at 42nd Street with tires screeching. The metal grate of the chest of the past was halfway down. Dante jumped out of the car before even turning off the engine fully. I ran after him, the snow soaking my shoes. He crouched down, grabbed the metal grate with both hands, and pushed it up with a grunt of effort, the metal groaning in protest. "Hey! We're closed!" Mrs. Higgins shouted from inside, holding the broom as if it were a weapon. When she saw Dante, tall, wet, dressed in a suit that cost more than the entire store and with a murderous look, she backed away, paling. "Mrs. Higgins, it's me, Elena," I shouted, ducking under Dante's arm to enter the store. "Please, it's urgent." "Elena?" The old lady lowered the broom, hand on her chest. "My goodness, girl. What is happening? Who is this?" Dante entered the store. The space seemed tiny with his presence. He placed the medallion on the scratched glass counter with a dull thud. "Who sold this?" His voice wasn't loud, which made it more frightening. It was the voice he used to destroy competitors in board meetings. "Today. Who brought this here?" Mrs. Higgins looked at the medallion, then at me, seeking help. "Please," I said, touching the lady's arm. "It's a matter of life or death." "Literally. Do you remember who brought the box of jewelry?" "Oh, dear, so many people come in," she began, nervous. Dante took his wallet from the inner pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a wad of bills, hundreds of dollars, and placed it on the counter. "I don't want change. I want a name." Or a face. A description. Anything. Mrs. Higgins' eyes widened. She looked at the money, swallowed hard, and then her expression cleared. It wasn't today, she said, her voice trembling. It was last night, just before I closed. A man. He was nervous, sweating a lot despite the cold. He brought a backpack full of stuff. Old clothes, some toys, and that box of jewelry. Said he was clearing out his deceased grandfather's apartment. What did he look like? Dante pressed, leaning over the counter. Young. 20s. Thin, pale. Had a scar here, she traced a line over her left eyebrow. And a tattoo on his neck. A scorpion, I think. Dante stood still. I saw the muscle in his jaw jump. Do you have a record? I asked quickly. By law, you have to register the identity of who sells items, right? For small things like this, usually no, she hesitated, seeing Dante's expression darken. But he sold me an old watch too. Gold. For that, I had to take his ID. Show me, Dante ordered. Mrs. Higgins ran to the back and returned with a thick ledger with a worn leather cover. She flipped through the pages with trembling fingers and stopped at yesterday's date. Here. Marcus Vane. Address in Queens. Dante spun the book around to read. He took out his cell phone and snapped a photo of the page. Marcus Vane, he repeated the name, as if testing the taste of it. Never heard of him. But I'll find out everything about him in 5 minutes. He turned to leave but stopped. His eyes fell on a cardboard box behind the counter, where Mrs. Higgins was sorting the new merchandise. That, Dante pointed, his finger trembling slightly. That teddy bear. On top of the pile was a brown teddy bear, battered, missing a button eye. It looked like trash. Ah, that came in the same backpack, said Mrs. Higgins. Was going to throw it away. It's too damaged. Dante walked to the box as if in a trance. He picked up the bear with a delicacy I didn't know he possessed. He pressed the bear's belly. There was no sound. The music box broke 20 years ago, he whispered, his voice broken. I broke it. Wrestling with her. He turned the bear over. On the faded tag on the back, written with red permanent marker, was a single letter, S. Dante closed his eyes, and for a second, I saw a solitary tear escape and run down his hard face. He wiped it away angrily before it could fall. It wasn't his grandfather who died, Dante said, his voice now icy, devoid of any human emotion except a murderous determination. This Marcus Vane, he was at the place where they kept my sister. Or he knows who kept her. He took the bear and turned to me. Let's go. Where to? I asked, feeling the ground beneath my feet disappearing. To Queens, he replied, opening the store door and letting the howling wind in. And Elena? Yes. He stopped in the doorway, his silhouette outlined against the snow. He looked at me, and there was something new in his eyes. It wasn't just gratitude. It was possessiveness. It was fear. You're not going home today. Nor tomorrow. What? Why? Because you found the medallion. Because Mrs. Higgins saw you with me. If the people who took Sophia know the trail has been reopened, they will clean up loose ends. He extended his hand to me. From now on, you are under my protection. Get in the car. I looked at Dante Moretti's extended hand. Accepting it meant accepting entering the whirlwind of his life, into the dark secrets of the Moretti family, and abandoning the safety of my invisible existence. I looked at the one-eyed bear under his arm. I took a deep breath and took his hand. The armored sedan cut through the storm toward Queens like a shark in dark waters. Inside the car, the only sound was the hum of the heater and Dante's low, lethal voice on the phone. "Silas, I want a tactical team at my location in 15 minutes. Track my GPS. And bring the medical kit. The full one." He hung up and tossed the cell phone into the center console. The dashboard light illuminated his tense profile, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard the leather groaned. "You have a tactical team?" I asked, my voice sounding small in that environment charged with testosterone and danger. "My family has many enemies, Elena. The corporate world is just the polished facade of a constant war." He glanced at me, and for a second, his armor fell. "I should leave you at a police station. Should leave you out of this." "I found the necklace," I retorted, surprising myself with my firmness. "And if this Marcus Vane guy sees my face and I'm not there to identify him, how will we know if it's the right man?" "Stubborn," he murmured, but there was a trace of respect in his voice. "Stay behind me. If I say run, you run. If I say get down, you throw yourself on the ground. Understood?" "Yes." We arrived at the address in Queens 10 minutes later. It was a housing project of grimy red bricks, the kind that seemed to exude hopelessness. The entrance lights were broken, and the lobby smelled of urine and cheap cigarettes. Dante parked in a side alley. Before getting out, he did something that chilled my blood, opened the glove compartment, took out a matte black pistol, checked the magazine with a dry metallic click, and placed it in the holster under his jacket. "Let's go," he said. The building had no doorman, nor a working elevator. We climbed 3 flights of stairs in the dark. Marcus Vane's apartment was 304. In the 3rd-floor hallway, Dante stopped abruptly, raising his hand to halt me. He tilted his head, listening. The door to 304 was ajar. The wood near the lock was splintered, as if it had been kicked in. "He's already had visitors," Dante whispered, drawing the gun. The movement was fluid, practiced. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a man trained for violence. "Elena, stay on the stairs." "No," I whispered back, grabbing the back of his coat. "I'm not staying out here alone." He cursed softly but nodded. "Don't touch anything." He pushed the door open with his foot. The apartment was silent. The only light came from the street, entering through a broken window, and from the television on without sound, casting a bluish and ghostly glow over the room. Everything was overturned. Drawers ripped out, clothes scattered, the sofa torn. Someone was looking for something. Dante advanced, gun pointed forward. I followed him, trying to control my ragged breathing. My eyes scanned the chaos, empty pizza boxes, used needles on the floor, and a foot. There was a bare foot appearing behind the overturned sofa. "Dante," I gasped. He had already seen it. He moved quickly, rounding the furniture. I peeked over his shoulder and brought my hand to my mouth to stifle a scream. Marcus Vane lay on his back. He matched Mrs. Higgins' description, young, pale, the scorpion tattoo on his neck. But the tattoo was cut in half by a deep red line. His throat had been slit. The blood on the carpet was still bright and wet. "Still warm," Dante said, his voice devoid of emotion, crouching beside the body to check for a pulse that clearly didn't exist. "Whoever did this left minutes ago." They knew," I whispered, panic starting to cloud my vision. "How did they know we were coming?" "They didn't know about us," Dante replied, standing up and sweeping the room with his eyes, looking for threats. "They knew Marcus made a mistake. He sold the necklace. He tried to make quick money with something that should have stayed hidden. They came to clean up the mess." He looked at the corpse with contempt. "He died without telling them who he sold it to." If he had told, they would be waiting at Mrs. Higgins' store, not here. Suddenly, a sound cut through the silence of the apartment. Bzzzt, bzzzt. It was coming from the pocket of Marcus's bloody jeans. Dante and I exchanged a look. He holstered the gun and, using a handkerchief from his pocket, pulled out Marcus's cell phone. It was a cheap, disposable device. The screen was cracked. It was ringing. The caller ID showed only the doctor. Dante looked at me. The decision passed through his eyes in a split second. If I answer, they'll know Marcus is no longer in charge, he said. If you don't answer, they'll be suspicious anyway, I argued. Dante slid his finger on the screen and put the phone on speaker, holding it in the air between us. He said nothing. Just waited. The breathing on the other end of the line was heavy, distorted, perhaps by a voice modifier. You sold the silver, you useless idiot, the voice hissed. We saw the receipt in your backpack. Who bought it? If you don't get that piece back by midnight, the girl suffers. You know she can't take another session. The girl. Dante went rigid as stone. Color drained from his face. Where is she? Dante asked, his voice low, trying to imitate the desperate tone Marcus would likely have. There was a silence on the other end. An icy and calculating silence. You're not Marcus, the voice said. There was no fear, only sadistic curiosity. Marcus has a rat's voice. You sound like a wolf. A low, dry laugh echoed through the speaker. Merry Christmas, Mr. Moretti. I was wondering how long it would take for the smell of blood to attract you. The line went dead. Dante crushed the phone in his hand, the screen shattering under the pressure. He looked at the wall, but he wasn't seeing the peeling wallpaper. He was seeing something much worse. They have her, he whispered. She's alive. My sister is alive. Dante, I called, pulling his sleeve. I needed to bring him back to reality before the pain consumed him. Dante, look at this. I pointed to the floor, near the open hand of the corpse. Amidst the blood, Marcus had tried to write something with his finger in his last seconds of life. It was just a shaky scrawl on the dirty carpet, almost illegible, but visible under the TV light. 3 letters and a number. St. J for St. J, I read aloud. St. Jude? St. John? St. Jerome, Dante said immediately, the strategist's sharp mind resurfacing. It's an old abandoned psychiatric asylum in the Bronx. My father used to make donations to the psychiatric ward before it closed in the 90s. He looked at me, and the intensity in his eyes was terrifying. They are keeping her in a place my own family funded. Sirens began to wail in the distance, approaching fast. The police, the real ones, not Silas's team, were coming. Someone must have heard the struggle or Marcus's scream before we died. We have to go, Dante said, grabbing my hand. Now. But the police. If the police find us here, we'll lose hours explaining. Hours Sophia doesn't have. He pulled me toward the fire escape window. We'll leave out the back. Silas will meet us on the way. He opened the window and the freezing wind invaded the room, mixing with the metallic smell of blood. Are you ready to jump, Elena? I looked at the rusty iron ladder covered in ice, then at the man holding my hand as if it were his only anchor. I'm with you, I replied. And for the first time in my life, I really was. The howling wind of Queens felt like blades of ice against my skin as we descended the fire escape. The rusty metal creaked dangerously under the weight of Dante's boots, and with every step, I looked down at the dark alley 3 floors below. Don't look down, Elena. Look at me, Dante commanded, his firm voice cutting through my panic. He went down first, extending his hand to guide my feet on the steps slippery with snow. Blue and red lights began to flash on the brick walls of the alley. The sirens were deafening now, stopping in front of the building. We heard car doors slamming and voices shouting orders. "Police! Open the door!" "We have to jump," Dante said when we reached the last flight of the ladder, which was stuck 8 feet from the ground. He jumped first, landing with feline grace in the dirty snow. He turned and opened his arms. "Come. I'll catch you." I didn't hesitate. I jumped into the darkness, trusting blindly that he would be there. The impact was hard, but Dante's arms wrapped around me, absorbing the shock. For a second, I was pressed against his chest, feeling his heart beat as fast as mine. "Let's go," he whispered, releasing me, although his hand slid down to hold mine firmly. We ran through the maze of alleys, frozen trash crunching under our feet. At the end of the block, an unmarked black van was waiting with the engine running. The side door slid open before we even arrived. Dante pushed me inside and jumped in right after. "Go, Silas. Now!" Dante shouted, banging on the partition between the cab and the back. The van screeched its tires, throwing us against the leather seats as it shot away from the crime scene. In the driver's seat, a giant man with a shaved head and a scar running from ear to chin looked in the rearview mirror. His eyes were cold and professional. "We're clear, boss," said Silas, his voice sounding like gravel being crushed. "Police are busy surrounding the front of the building." "Who's the civilian?" "She's with me," Dante said, his tone ending any questioning. "What do you have on St. Jerome?" Silas tossed a tablet to the back seat. Dante caught it, the screen light illuminating his face soiled with soot and tension. "Place is a hellhole, boss. Closed in '98 for human rights violations. Government sold the property to a private holding company in 2005. Guess who the holding company is?" Dante slid his finger across the screen. "Viper Corporation." I gasped. "The pharmaceutical subsidiary of Russo Corp? The company you're about to merge with?" Dante looked at me, eyes flashing with horrified realization. The merger, my God. They weren't just negotiating business. They were keeping me close. Monitoring me while holding my sister as collateral. He clenched his fists. They kept her in the ruins of a hospital my father helped build, under the ownership of the company I was about to bring into my house. "Dante," I said softly, placing my hand over his fist. "It's not your fault. They are monsters. But now we know where she is." He turned his hand and interlaced his fingers with mine. The grip was desperate. "If she is there, Elena, after 15 years, I don't know what I will find. I don't know what they did to her." "The wolf," I whispered, remembering the inscription on the medallion. "The wolf protects her soul. She is a Moretti. She is strong, like you." The Bronx loomed in the window, grim and industrial. The van climbed an isolated hill, where skeletal winter trees looked like claws trying to reach the sky. And there it was. St. Jerome Asylum. It was a Gothic monstrosity of gray stone, rising against the night like a rotting corpse. Broken windows looked like empty sockets, and dead ivy covered the walls like black veins. Silas parked at the edge of the woods surrounding the property, killing the lights. "Thermal cameras on the perimeter," Silas warned, checking a monitor on the dashboard. "But there's a blind spot on the east wing. Old service entrance." Dante opened a secret compartment under the seat and pulled out 2 bulletproof vests. He put one on and tossed the other to me. "Put this on," he ordered. "And stay behind Silas and me." "I'm not staying in the car," I said before he could suggest it. "I know," he replied, adjusting his gun holster. He took something else from the compartment, a heavy tactical flashlight. He handed it to me. If something moves and it's not me or Silas, shine this in their eyes and run to the van. We stepped down into the deep snow. The silence here was different from Queens. There were no sirens. Only the wind whistling through the broken windows of the asylum. We advanced through the woods, Silas on point, moving with military efficiency. We reached the service entrance, a rusty metal door that Silas breached with a crowbar in seconds. The smell hit us as soon as we entered. Mold, damp plaster, and underneath it all, the chemical and unmistakable scent of strong antiseptic. The place was supposed to be abandoned, I whispered, my voice echoing slightly in the corridor of broken tiles. Why does it smell like a clean hospital? Because Ward 4 isn't abandoned, Dante said, pointing to the floor. Amidst the dust and debris of decades, there were fresh tire marks from carts and boot prints. And, running along the ceiling, a conduit of new, black, shiny electrical cables disappearing into the darkness of the corridor. We followed the cables. The asylum was a labyrinth of shadows. We passed rooms with overturned wheelchairs and rusty gurneys, ghosts of a painful past. But the further north we advanced, toward Ward 4, the more the scenery changed. The floor became clean. The walls, freshly painted a clinical white. Modern security cameras blinked red lights in the corners. Silas, take care of the cameras, Dante whispered. Silas raised a silenced pistol and fired twice. PFT, PFT. The cameras shattered. We reached double doors of brushed steel with a large 4 painted in black. There was an electronic keypad next to it. I'll handle this, Silas said, connecting a device to the panel. Numbers spun on the screen. Dante was vibrating with tension beside me. He held the gun with both hands, pointed at the floor, but ready to raise. Elena, he said, without looking at me. Whatever is in there, don't let it break you. You need to be my eyes if I go blind with rage. I'm here, Dante. The keypad beeped green. The magnetic lock released with a loud click. Dante pushed the doors. It wasn't a prison. There were no cells. It was an observation corridor. On one side, an entire wall of mirrored glass overlooked a room below. We ran to the glass. Down below, in an environment that looked like a grotesquely normal living room, with shag carpets, a bookshelf, and a comfortable armchair, there was a woman. She was sitting with her back to us, brushing long black hair that fell to her waist. She wore a simple white dress. Dante placed his hands on the glass. Sophia, he whispered, his voice breaking. As if hearing his thought, the woman stopped brushing her hair. She stood up slowly and turned around. I held my breath. It was her. The same features as Dante, the same proud chin. But the eyes were empty, distant, as if she were looking at a world only she could see. And then, I saw what was in her lap when she stood up. She wasn't holding a doll. She was holding a knife. A surgical knife, shiny and sharp. And in the corner of that comfortable room, tied to a chair, gagged and eyes wide with terror, was a man in an expensive suit. Dante took a step back, pale as death. That is Lorenzo Russo, he said, his voice full of horror. The CEO of Russo Corporation. The father of the man I was negotiating with. A loudspeaker in the ceiling of our corridor crackled to life. The same distorted voice from Marcus's phone filled the air. Welcome to the family reunion, Dante. Just in time for the final test. Let's see if Moretti blood is still as murderous as they say. Her room door will open in 10 seconds. You enter and save her, or let her finish what she started. The woman, Sophia, looked directly at the mirror, as if she could see us through it. She smiled at the knife. And then walked toward the tied-up man. The Countdown began on the loudspeaker. 10. 9. Dante roared and ran to the side access door, kicking it with a force that could knock down a wall. The steel door gave way with a deafening crash under Dante's boot. He burst into the sterile room like a force of nature, gun in hand, but pointed at the floor. "Sophia, no!" His scream reverberated off the white walls, shattering the artificial serenity of that disguised hospital room. Sophia stopped. The surgical blade was millimeters from Lorenzo Russo's pulsing jugular. The old CEO whimpered through the gag, eyes wide with terror, sweat running down his bald forehead. Sophia turned her head slowly toward Dante. The movement was mechanical, devoid of humanity. There was no recognition in her eyes. Only a terrifying void. 5. 4. The doctor's voice continued the count on the loudspeaker, indifferent to the interruption. "Sophia, it's me." Dante took a step forward, hands raised, dropping the gun on the shag carpet to show he wasn't a threat. "It's Dante. Your brother." She tilted her head, like a curious bird watching an insect. "Brother," she repeated. Her voice was hoarse, as if unused for years. "The doctor says I have no brother. The doctor says family is a disease." 3. 2. Her hand tensed on the knife handle. She was programmed. An automaton of flesh and bone about to execute a command. "Do something," I shouted to Dante, entering the room right behind him. The air inside was freezing, artificially refrigerated. Dante was paralyzed by the horror of seeing the sister he loved transformed into a weapon. He couldn't shoot. He couldn't reach her in time. 1. Sophia's arm moved to strike. "The necklace!" I shouted, the idea exploding in my mind. I shoved my hand into my coat pocket and ripped out the cardboard box, taking out the silver medallion. I ran forward, ignoring the danger, and threw myself on my knees between Dante and Sophia, holding the necklace up at her eye level. The shine of the silver captured the cold light of the room. "Look at the wolf, Sophia!" I shouted, my voice trembling. "The wolf protects the soul." The blade stopped in midair. Sophia's eyes fixed on the object dangling from my hand. The medallion swayed gently. The wolf howling at the moon. The dagger between its teeth. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Lorenzo Russo's wheezing breath. Sophia's empty expression began to crack. Her forehead furrowed. Her pupil dilated. It was like watching a computer rebooting, fighting a virus. "Wolf," she whispered. The hand holding the knife began to tremble violently. "Daddy gave to protect." She dropped the knife. The sound of metal hitting the laminate wood floor was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Sophia brought both hands to her head, screaming. A scream of pure pain, of forced memories breaking mental barriers. She fell to her knees, curling into a fetal position. Dante was beside her in an instant. He wrapped her in his arms, pulling her against his armored chest, rocking her as if she were a child. "I'm here, cara mia. I'm here," he murmured into her hair, tears finally running free down his face. "It's over. I got you." On the loudspeaker, the counting had stopped. There was a moment of static, and then the doctor's voice returned. There was no more amusement in his tone. Only cold irritation. "Disappointing. Conditioning failed. Subject is unstable." An audible sigh. "Silas, you should have checked the thermal cameras more often. Cleaning crew is en route." 2 minutes. The line died with a final click. Silas appeared in the destroyed doorway, pistol raised. His face was grim. "Boss, we have company. Heavy vehicles coming up the hill." Mercenaries. We have to leave now. Dante raised his head. The moment of tenderness vanished, replaced by the fury of the wolf. He looked at Lorenzo Russo, still tied up and crying. And him? I asked, pointing to the old man. Dante stood up, pulling Sophia with him, keeping a firm arm around her waist. She seemed catatonic now, eyes glazed over again, but not violent. Dante walked over to Lorenzo. With a quick movement, he pulled the surgical knife from the floor and cut the ropes binding the man's hands and feet. Then, he ripped off the gag. Moretti. Lorenzo stuttered, coughing. Thank God. They were going to make me watch. Shut up, Dante growled. You're coming with us. You are the only witness that I wasn't the one who kidnapped my own sister. I can't walk, my legs are numb. Lorenzo whimpered. Silas, Dante ordered. The giant security guard snorted, grabbed the CEO of Russo Corp by the collar of his Italian suit, and lifted him as if he were a trash bag. Walk or be dragged. Elena, stay glued to me, Dante said, handing me his backup weapon, a smaller pistol he took from his ankle, to me. Do you know how to use this? I saw it in movies, I admitted, holding the cold metal with two trembling hands. Point and squeeze, right? Take the safety off first, he said, doing it for me with a quick and surprisingly gentle touch. We'll leave through the basement. The original blueprints showed a service tunnel to the morgue. We left room 4. The white, sterile corridor now looked like a tunnel of death. Red emergency lights began to rotate, bathing everything in a blood color. We ran. Silas in front, dragging Lorenzo, who stumbled and complained. Dante in the middle, practically carrying Sophia, who just moved her feet mechanically. I came behind, walking backward every few meters, the gun seeming to weigh a ton. We reached the service stairs when the first window at the end of the hall exploded. Glass flew everywhere. Men dressed in tactical black rappelled down the broken elevator shaft. They were professionals. The cleaning crew. Contact! Silas shouted, firing twice. One of the men fell. Down. Down. Dante pushed Sophia and me into the dark stairwell. Shots ricocheted off the metal walls above us. The sound was deafening in that confined space. We stumbled down the steps, the darkness of the basement swallowing us. We reached the lower level. The air here was even colder and smelled of dirt and old formaldehyde. The tunnel, Dante pointed his flashlight down a long, damp corridor with dripping pipes. Leads to the drainage outlet in the woods east of our van. They'll surround the van, Silas warned, breathing hard while pushing Lorenzo. We're not going to the van, Dante said, adjusting his grip on Sophia, who had started muttering the word wolf repeatedly under her breath. We're going to steal their car. We advanced through the tunnel. The freezing water reached our ankles. My office shoes were ruined, my feet numb, but adrenaline masked the pain. Suddenly, Sophia stopped. She dug her feet into the tunnel mud and refused to move. Sophia, let's go, Dante pleaded. We can't stop. She raised her head. In the dim light, her eyes met mine. For the first time, there was a flash of real lucidity, not induced by the necklace, but by fear. They don't want me, Dante, she said, her voice clear and terrible. They want you. I am just the bait. I won't leave you, he swore. Then you will die, she said simply. Before we could react, a stun grenade rolled down the stairs behind us. Clang. 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 Cover. Silas roared, throwing Lorenzo to the ground and covering him with his body. Dante pulled me to the ground, covering Sophia and me with his armored body. The explosion was a white flash and a sound that made my teeth vibrate. My ears rang. The world spun. When the dust settled, I saw black boots emerging from the smoke at the top of the stairs. There were many of them. We were cornered in the morgue tunnel. Dante raised his head, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. He looked at me, then at Sophia. And then, he made a decision I saw form in his gray eyes. The decision of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Silas," he shouted over the ringing. "Take them. Take Elena and Sophia. Get Lorenzo out of here. I'll hold them off." "No," I shouted, grabbing his arm. "You said I was under your protection. You said we wouldn't separate." "I am protecting you, Elena," he said, touching my face with a hand soiled with gunpowder and blood. "This is the only way." He stood up, standing in the middle of the tunnel, a perfect target, gun raised against the darkness coming behind us. "Go! Go!" Dante's scream echoed through the concrete tunnel, mixing with the sound of bullets starting to ricochet off the damp walls around him. Silas, with the brutal efficiency of a soldier, grabbed Sophia's arm with one hand and pushed Lorenzo Russo with the other. He turned to me, thick fingers reaching for my coat to drag me to safety. "Let's go, girl," he roared. I looked at Dante. He was alone in the middle of the dark corridor, his silhouette illuminated only by the flashes of the mercenaries' shots at the top of the stairs. He was sacrificing himself. He was going to die there, in a sewer ditch under an abandoned asylum, so I could live. The fear I felt was icy and paralyzing. But the anger? The anger was liquid fire. I am no longer the assistant who waits in the car, I thought. Not after today. I dodged Silas's arm. "Take them," I shouted to the security guard. "I'm not going without him." "Elena, don't be stupid." Silas bellowed, but he had orders. Protecting the boss's sister was priority 0. He cursed, grabbed Sophia, who was now screaming her brother's name, and ran into the darkness of the tunnel, kicking Lorenzo to make him move. I turned and ran back. Back into the fire. Dante was firing methodically, counting bullets, but there were too many of them. I saw a bullet hit the concrete pillar inches from his head, spraying dust into his eyes. He recoiled, stumbling. I reached his side and raised the gun he gave me. My hands were shaking so much I could barely aim, but I pointed at the top of the stairs and pulled the trigger. Bang! Bang! The recoil of the gun almost dislocated my wrist, but the sound surprised the mercenaries. They stopped for a second, confused by the new shooter. Dante turned to me, eyes wide with shock and pure fury. "I told you to go," he roared, grabbing my arm and pulling me behind a rusty support beam. And I decided to resign from that order. I shouted back, breathless. "You are not going to die alone in this sewer, Dante Moretti. There are 6 of them. We have ammo for 30 seconds. I looked around, desperate. My eyes landed on a tangle of old pipes running along the low ceiling of the tunnel. One of them, thick and covered in torn thermal insulation, was hissing slightly. There was a rusty red valve right above the stairs where the mercenaries were grouping. "Dante." I pointed. "The pipe. It's steam." He looked up. Understanding was instantaneous. The strategist in him took control. "Cover your ears and open your mouth," he ordered. He leaned out from cover, aimed with supernatural calm, and fired a single time. The bullet hit the rusty valve perfectly. It wasn't just a leak. It was an explosion. A jet of pressurized steam, accumulated for decades in the heating system of the old asylum, erupted with the sound of a jet turbine. The mercenaries screamed. The scalding steam filled the stairwell in seconds, creating a white, hot, impenetrable barrier. They couldn't see us. They could barely breathe. Now. Dante grabbed my hand. We ran. We ran as if the devil were on our heels. Dirty water splashed on our clothes, the tunnel seemed endless, but the sound of screams and hissing steam falling behind gave us hope. We saw the light of Silas's flashlight ahead. They had reached the drainage grate. Silas had already ripped out the corroded metal bars. "Boss!" Silas shouted, relieved, pulling Dante out of the hole. Dante, in turn, pulled me. We fell into the soft snow of the woods. The cold night air had never tasted so sweet. I was coughing, my lungs burning, but we were alive. "Where is their vehicle?" Dante asked, standing up immediately, ignoring the blood running down his forehead. "Parked on the north access road." 2 guards, Silas informed, pointing through the trees. "Sophia?" Dante looked at his sister. She was sitting in the snow, rocking, holding the silver medallion against her chest like a talisman. She seemed to have switched off again. "Let's take the car," Dante said. He looked at me. "Can you run a little more, Elena?" I nodded, although my legs felt like jelly. "I can." We advanced through the tree line. The mercenaries' tactical SUV was there, engine running, heater full blast. 2 men were smoking outside, relaxed, waiting for their colleagues to return with the prisoners. They never saw what hit them. Dante and Silas emerged from the darkness like shadows. It was fast, brutal, and silent. In seconds, the 2 men were unconscious in the snow. "Everyone inside," Dante ordered, taking the wheel. Silas threw Lorenzo in the back seat and sat next to him with Sophia. I jumped into the passenger seat. Dante floored it. The SUV skidded in the snow and shot down the dirt road, moving away from the cursed asylum. Only when we hit the main highway and the city lights appeared on the horizon did the tension begin to ebb, replaced by crushing exhaustion. Dante looked at me. The dashboard light illuminated the cut on his forehead and the dirt on his $1,000 suit. But his look was intense, stripped of any barrier. "You came back," he said, low, so only I could hear. "No one has ever come back for me before." "I wasn't going to leave you there," I replied, my voice failing. The adrenaline was wearing off, and I started shivering from the cold. He took his hand off the wheel for a second and held mine. His fingers were warm. "You are the craziest and bravest woman I have ever met, Elena." In the back seat, Lorenzo Russo started whimpering again. "Moretti, you have to let me go. If the doctor knows I'm with you." "The doctor already knows," Dante cut him off, looking in the rearview mirror. "Who is he, Russo? Who were you working for? Why my sister?" "I don't know his name," Lorenzo shouted, hysterical. "No one knows. He is a ghost. He contacts through encrypted servers. He knew about my company's dirty laundry. He blackmailed me to use Viper Corp's facilities. He said he needed a place for Project Lazarus." "Project Lazarus?" I asked. "Resurrection," Sophia whispered. We all looked at her. She wasn't staring into the void anymore. She was looking at Dante. Her eyes were clear, lucid in a frightening way. "He didn't want money, Dante," she said softly. "He wanted you. All this time, the 15 years, he was preparing me. Conditioning me." "Preparing you for what?" Dante asked, voice trembling. "To kill you," Sophia replied. She opened her hand. The silver medallion was in her palm. "He said the only thing that could destroy a Moretti was another Moretti." A heavy silence fell over the car. "Where are we going, boss?" Silas asked, breaking the silence. Your cover is blown. The office too. They know who we are. They have infinite resources. Dante gripped the wheel. We can't go to the police. Russo Corp has half the judges and commissioners in their pocket. I don't have access to my secure accounts without alerting them to my location. He looked at the road ahead, a dead end. The most powerful man I knew was, suddenly, homeless. I know a place, I said. Dante looked at me. No one will look for the CEO of Moretti Industries and his undead sister there, I continued, feeling my face flush. It has no high-end security system, and the heater makes noise, but it's safe. Where? He asked. My apartment. In Brooklyn. Dante looked at me, then at the road, and then at me again. A slight, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Brooklyn, he said, turning the wheel toward the bridge exit. Sounds perfect. But as we headed toward the only safety left to us, I saw Sophia in the back seat. She was looking at the medallion again. And with her thumb, she pressed a secret latch on the side of the pendant I didn't even know existed. The medallion opened. There wasn't a photo inside. There was a small computer chip, glowing with a metallic green. Sophia closed the medallion quickly and looked at me. She put a finger to her lips. Shoo. My apartment in Brooklyn was on the 4th floor of a walk-up building, on a street where the Christmas lights were mostly cheap plastic and blinked out of sync. When Dante parked the stolen and dented SUV between a delivery van and a snow-covered fire hydrant, it looked like a spaceship had landed in my neighborhood. It's here, I said, feeling sudden shame. My windows had old curtains. The hallway paint was peeling. This wasn't Dante Moretti's world. It's perfect, Dante said, turning off the engine. He looked at the deserted street. No one will look for us here. Silas, take Lorenzo. I'll take Sophia. The climb was silent and tense. Silas carried Lorenzo Russo like a sack of potatoes over his shoulder, muffling the man's protests with a huge hand. Dante supported Sophia, who climbed the steps with eyes fixed on her feet, humming lullabies to herself. When I unlocked the door and turned on the light, my small world was revealed. A tiny living room with a worn sofa covered in a knitted blanket, a cramped kitchenette, and piles of books and my mother's medical bills on the coffee table. It smelled of vanilla and dampness. Sorry for the mess, I murmured, closing the door and locking the 3 locks. Dante looked around. He looked giant in that space. His head almost brushed the ceiling fixture. It's warm, he said, voice hoarse. And safe. That's all that matters. Where do I put the trash? Silas asked, pointing to Lorenzo, who was struggling on his shoulder. In the bathtub, I pointed to the small bathroom. It's the only place where he won't break anything. And take off his tie to tie his hands, please. While Silas dealt with the hostage, I helped Dante sit Sophia on the sofa. She shrank immediately, pulling her knees to her chest. She looked like a broken porcelain doll. I'll make tea, I said, needing to do something normal amidst the madness. And... Dante, you need to clean that cut on your forehead. I'm fine, he dismissed, but faltered when he tried to take a step. Sit down, I ordered, pointing to the old armchair that had been my mother's. Now. To my surprise, the CEO of Moretti Industries obeyed. He collapsed into the armchair, closing his eyes and letting out a long sigh that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. I fetched the first aid kit from under the sink. While I cleaned the dried blood from his forehead with cotton and antiseptic, I could observe him closely. He was exhausted. The worry lines around his eyes were deep. Without the armor of the impeccable suit and the commanding posture, he looked human. Why are there so many medical bills on the table? he asked suddenly, without opening his eyes. My hand paused. My mother. She had cancer last year. Insurance didn't cover everything. He opened his gray eyes. They fixed on mine. You've worked for me for 2 years. Never asked for an advance. Never told me. It wasn't your problem, Mr. Moretti. Dante, he corrected, holding my wrist gently, stopping me from pulling my hand away. My name is Dante. And you saved my life and my sister's today. Everything that is mine is now your problem. Including the debts. I didn't do it for money, I whispered, feeling heat rise to my neck. I know, he said, and the intensity in his voice made my heart race. That's what scares me. No one does anything for free in my world, Elena. Except you. The moment was broken by the sound of the bathroom door closing. Silas returned, wiping his hands. The package is secure. He'll complain, but he won't run. Checked the windows. We're clean for now. Dante released my wrist and straightened up, the leader mask returning to place. But before he could give orders, Sophia spoke from the sofa. Elena. Her voice was clear. Lucid. We all looked at her. Sophia was sitting with her back straight, the madness temporarily pushed from her dark eyes. She extended her closed hand toward me. We need to see, she said. Dante frowned. See what, Sophia? I swallowed hard. The secret. The chip. She showed me something in the car, I admitted, walking to the sofa. Inside the medallion. Sophia opened her hand and revealed the small green chip. Dante jumped up and approached. What is that? He asked. Life insurance, Sophia replied, voice cold. For 15 years, the doctor kept me doped up, but not stupid. They used me as a guinea pig, but they also liked to brag. Russo, the scientists, the guards, they talked. And I listened. She handed the chip to Dante. I stole this from the main office the night Marcus helped me send the necklace. That's why they were so desperate. It wasn't just for me. It was for the data. Do you have a computer? Dante asked me. An old laptop in the bedroom, I said. I went to get it. It was a slow machine, fan making noise, but it worked. We put the laptop on the coffee table, pushing aside the medical bills. Dante inserted the chip into a card reader Silas carried in his tactical gear and plugged it into the USB port. The screen flickered. A black window opened, asking for a password. Damn it, Silas growled. Military-grade encryption. It'll take us weeks to crack this. It won't, Sophia said. She leaned forward, pale fingers hovering over the keyboard. I know the password. The doctor, he is a man of ego. He used the same word for everything. She typed slowly. 5 letters. HYDRA enter. Folders upon folders of files opened on the screen. Lists of names. Bank transactions. Surveillance videos. Dante clicked on the folder named Investors. An Excel document opened. It was hundreds of names. Politicians, judges, police chiefs. All on Russo Corp's payroll and the mysterious project at St. Jerome. But it was the first name on the list, highlighted in red, that made the blood drain from the room. Dante stood still. His breathing stopped. No, he whispered. That's impossible. I leaned in to read the name. Giuseppe Moretti. Your father? I asked, shocked. But, he died 10 years ago. Heart attack. Yes, Dante said, voice trembling with a contained fury that was more frightening than his screams. He died. But look at the date of the last transfer. I looked at the date column. December 24th. Yesterday. He is alive, Sophia said, emotionless, as if commenting on the weather. The doctor told me once that the biggest funder of the project was someone who wanted to cheat death. Someone who sacrificed his own daughter to perfect resurrection technology. Dante backed away from the table as if the laptop were burning. He slammed his back against the wall, hands gripping his hair. His world, which had already been shaken, had just been destroyed. His father. The man he idolized. The man whose empire he protected tooth and nail. Not only was he alive, he was the one who ordered Sophia's kidnapping. The doctor. Dante whispered, and a mad, incredulous laugh escaped his lips. The doctor isn't just any scientist. The doctor is my father. Suddenly, the laptop emitted a sharp sound. Beep. 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 A new window opened on the screen. It was a GPS tracker. A red dot was blinking on the map of New York. And the red dot was exactly on top of my apartment in Brooklyn. It's a silent tracker, Silas shouted, drawing his gun and running to the window. As soon as the password was entered, it activated the signal. He peered through the old curtains. Boss, Silas said, voice calm and terrifying. We have 3 black vans blocking the street. And a helicopter approaching from the riverside. Dante pushed off the wall. The pain and shock disappeared from his face, replaced by something much more dangerous. The wolf had awakened, and now he knew who the real prey was. They want a family reunion? Dante said, walking to me and holding my hand tightly. Then let's give them one. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not for him. For me. Elena, do you have a fire escape out back? Yes, I replied, panic starting to set in. Through the bedroom window. Silas, take Sophia. I'll take Lorenzo, Dante ordered. Elena, take the laptop. That is the only proof we have. And where are we going? I asked, grabbing the computer while the sound of helicopter blades began to vibrate the thin windows of my apartment. Dante looked at the green chip. We're going to the only place where my father can't touch us, he said. We're going to the cemetery. To his grave. Because if he is alive, I want to know what is inside that coffin. The sound of the helicopter blades seemed to hammer directly into my skull. The living room windows shattered inward in a shower of glass and freezing wind, and a beam of white light swept my apartment, blinding us. Move! Dante roared, pushing me toward the bedroom window. Silas was already on the fire escape, balancing Lorenzo's dead weight on one shoulder and holding Sophia's arm with the other hand. Dante's sister seemed strangely calm amidst the chaos, as if the storm outside were less frightening than the storms inside her head. I went through the window, the icy metal of the ladder burning my hands. Dante came last, firing 3 covering shots at the front door, which was being breached by a battering ram. Boom! My door gave way. Men in black invaded my small home. Down! Don't stop! Dante shouted, jumping onto the metal platform beside me. We ran down the 4 floors, slipping on accumulated snow. Bullets began to hit the brick wall around us, kicking up red dust. The helicopter tilted, trying to find a firing angle, but the narrow alley protected us. We reached the ground. Dante's SUV was blocked in front of the building by the black vans. The car isn't an option, I shouted. The subway is 2 blocks away. We're not taking the subway with a hostage and a traumatized woman, Dante retorted, looking around frantically. His eyes landed on an old car, a 90s Ford sedan, full of rust, parked at the alley exit. "Silas." Dante pointed. No more needed to be said. Silas ran to the car, smashed the driver's window with the butt of his gun, and unlocked the door. In seconds, he was hot-wiring it under the steering wheel. We shoved Lorenzo and Sophia into the back seat. I jumped into the passenger seat, laptop clutched to my chest. Dante took the wheel as soon as the engine sputtered and came to life. "Hold on," he warned. The car took off, skidding on ice, escaping the alley seconds before one of the armored vans blocked the exit. Dante drove like a getaway driver, ignoring red lights, zigzagging through Brooklyn backstreets to lose the helicopter. The silence in the car was heavy. No one spoke about what we had left behind. My home. My old life. Everything destroyed. I looked at Dante. His face was a mask of stone, illuminated by passing streetlights. He was going to the cemetery. He was going to desecrate his own father's grave to find the truth. "Are you okay?" I asked, putting my hand on his shoulder. The muscle was rigid as steel. "He lied to me," Dante said, voice low, almost inaudible over the roar of the old engine. "For 10 years, I brought flowers to that grave. I talked to his tombstone. Asked for advice. Mourned his death." He gripped the wheel until his knuckles turned white. "I idolized the monster who tortured my sister." "We don't know what we'll find there," I said, trying to be the voice of reason, though my heart was racing as fast as his. "I know what I expect to find," Sophia said from the back seat. Her voice made us shiver. "I expect to find hell empty. Because the devil is loose." Greenwood Cemetery was a city of the dead, vast and silent under the snow. The main gates were closed, but Dante knew an old service entrance used by gardeners, the lock of which yielded easily to a well-aimed shot from Silas. We entered with the car, turning off the headlights to avoid drawing attention. The full moon, the same moon from the medallion, illuminated Gothic tombstones and angel statues that seemed to watch us with disapproval. The Moretti family mausoleum sat atop a hill, an imposing structure of black marble and Greek columns. It was a monument to wealth and power, even in death. We got out of the car. The wind here was cutting, howling through the bare trees. "Silas, stay with Lorenzo in the car," Dante ordered. "If anyone approaches, shoot." "And Sophia?" I asked. "She comes with us," Dante said, extending his hand to his sister. She accepted, stepping out of the car like a ghost in the snow. "She deserves to see this." We climbed the marble steps. Dante stopped before the double bronze doors, decorated with the family crest, the wolf and the dagger. He took an old key from his pocket, a key he kept on his keychain for 10 years, never using. The lock clicked, echoing in the night. The doors creaked open, releasing a smell of stale air, dried flowers, and cold stone. I turned on my phone flashlight. The tactical flashlight was left in the tunnel. The interior was vast. There were several niches in the walls with the names of Moretti ancestors. But in the center, dominating the space, was a white marble sarcophagus raised on a platform. The gold plate shown in the flashlight beam, "Giuseppe Moretti 1955 to 2015 family is eternal eternal," Dante spat the word with disgust. He walked to the sarcophagus. The marble lid must have weighed hundreds of pounds, but it wasn't sealed with cement, just resting by gravity. "Help me," he said, looking at me. I put the laptop on the floor and positioned myself beside him. Sophia stood in the doorway, watching with shining eyes. "On 3, Dante said. 1, 2, 3. We pushed. The sound of stone dragging on stone was sharp, teeth-grating. My whole body ached, my shoes slipped on the polished floor, but the lid began to move. Inch by inch. Enough to see inside. Dante stopped, panting. He took my hand holding the phone and pointed the light inside the coffin. I braced myself to see a skeleton. Rotted clothes. Dust. But there was none of that. The coffin was empty of a body. There were no bones. There was no suit. But it wasn't totally empty. At the bottom of the coffin, resting on pristine white satin, was a single object. A black, antique rotary phone. The kind used in offices in the 80s. The cord was cut, but a small red light blinked on the base. Dante looked at the phone, confused. "What is this?" I whispered. "A joke?" Suddenly, the phone rang. Rang. The mechanical and shrill sound exploded in the silence of the mausoleum, making me jump and grab Dante's arm. The sound reverberated off the stone walls, too loud, impossible for a phone without connection. Dante stood still, staring at the device as if it were a venomous snake. "Rang." "Answer it, brother," Sophia whispered from the door. "Daddy wants to welcome you to the game." With a slightly trembling hand, Dante reached into his father's grave. He lifted the heavy receiver and brought it to his ear. I moved closer, leaning my head on his shoulder to try to hear. There was a moment of static. And then, a voice. It wasn't the distorted voice of the doctor. It was a clear, baritone, cultured voice. The voice of a man I had heard in company archive recordings. "Hello, Dante," Giuseppe Moretti's voice said, calm and fatherly. "You took longer than I expected to open Pandora's box. I'm disappointed. I thought I taught you to be more curious. Where are you?" Dante growled, tears of anger running down his face. "Why did you do this? Why did you destroy Sophia?" "Progress demands sacrifice, son," Giuseppe replied. "Sophia was fragile. But you? You are my masterpiece. You built the empire that funded my research without asking questions. You were a good boy." Dante gripped the phone so hard the plastic cracked. "But now, the game has changed," the voice continued, getting darker. "You stole my data. You took my guinea pig. And you brought a stranger into our family sanctuary. The girl. Elena, isn't it?" I froze upon hearing my name. "Say goodbye, Dante," Giuseppe said. "Look up." Dante and I looked at the vaulted ceiling of the mausoleum. In the center of the dome, a small red light began to blink, accompanied by a rhythmic sound. Beep. 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 "It's a bomb," Dante shouted, dropping the phone. "Get out. Now." He grabbed me by the waist and ran toward Sophia, pushing us out the bronze doors just as the beep sound turned into a continuous tone. We jumped down the marble steps, rolling in the snow, seconds before a dull explosion made the ground shake. A fireball of orange and black erupted from the mausoleum doors, destroying the tomb, the phone, and any trace that Giuseppe Moretti had ever rested there. Lying in the snow, with pieces of marble raining down around us, Dante raised his head. His face was dirty with soot, but his eyes no longer held doubts. "He wants war," Dante said, spitting blood. "Then let's give him war." "Elena, grab the laptop. We're going to destroy the empire he loves so much. Dollar by dollar." The old Ford rumbled and shook as we crossed the bridge to the Rockaways, a desolate peninsula on the edge of Queens. Snow was falling harder now, turning the world into a blind white that, thankfully, hid our trail. Behind us, the orange glow of the explosion at the cemetery had already disappeared, swallowed by the night, but the sound still echoed in my ears. "Where are we going, Silas?" Dante asked from the driver's seat. He had his eyes fixed on the road, knuckles white on the wheel. He had just tried to talk to his dead father and almost been blown up by him. His composure was hanging by a thread. To my fishing retreat, Silas replied, checking Lorenzo's bindings. No one knows about it. Not even you, boss. Bought it in cash 10 years ago. It's an old shack on an abandoned dock. Has a generator and oil heating. We arrived 20 minutes later. The retreat was exactly what Silas had described, a gray wooden shack teetering on rotting piles, surrounded by fishing boats beached in the snow. The wind from the Atlantic howled like a wounded animal. We ran inside. Silas started the generator with a violent pull on the starter cord, and yellow lights flickered on, illuminating a space full of fishing nets, toolboxes, and a rusty wood stove. Dante pushed a table full of bait to the center of the room and signaled for me to place the laptop. Lorenzo, to the corner, Silas ordered, pushing the CEO of Russo Corp into a chair and handcuffing him to a support pillar. And if you make noise, I'll use duct tape again. Sophia walked to the single window, looking out at the dark and choppy sea. She seemed to be vibrating at a different frequency than us. Elena, turn that on, Dante said, taking off his explosion-singed coat. He was shivering, not from cold, but adrenaline. Let's see what is worth enough for my father to try to kill his own son. I opened the laptop. The screen came to life, still showing the map with the red dot on my destroyed apartment. I closed that window and opened the file folders the chip had unlocked. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, Zurich, Singapore, I read, scanning the columns of numbers. Dante, this is billions. The Russo Moretti merger money, it was all diverted here. He was stealing from his own company, Dante murmured, leaning over my shoulder. He was draining the empire I built to fund Project Lazarus. Click on the prototypes folder, Sophia said from the window, without turning. I obeyed. The folder contained videos. I clicked on the most recent one, dated a week ago. The video showed an operating room at St. Jerome. On a table lay a soldier with fatal gunshot wounds to the chest. Monitors showed a flatline heart rate. Then, a medical team injected a silver liquid into the soldier's veins. Seconds later, they applied an electric shock. The soldier arched his back. The flatline turned into a frenetic rhythm. The man sat up on the table, eyes totally black, screaming soundlessly. He ripped off his own restraints with inhuman strength before the video cut. I covered my mouth, horrified. They are trying to create immortal soldiers, Dante completed, voice full of revulsion. Zombies with super strength. This is what my father calls progress. This is what he wants to sell to the highest bidder. No, Sophia said. She turned and walked to us. Her eyes were focused on the laptop with frightening intensity. He doesn't want to sell. He wants to control. And to control the subjects, he needs the source code. She touched her own chest. He needs me. What do you mean? Dante asked, holding her shoulders. I was the first success, Dante. I didn't die. My body accepted the serum, but my brain, he used my brain to store the encryption key that controls the others. If I die, or if I break free, his army becomes useless. They go mad and die. She gently pushed Dante away and sat in front of the keyboard. I can end this, she said. I know the transfer codes. I can drain the accounts. I can delete the research. I can destroy his legacy with a click. Do it, Dante said immediately. Sophia's fingers flew over the keys. While she worked, Dante stepped away and went to the wood stove, where Silas had lit a fire. He rubbed his face with soot-stained hands. I approached him. Are you okay? I asked softly. He looked at me. The pain in his gray eyes was devastating. He turned my sister into a human hard drive, Elena. He tried to kill us in the family tomb. Everything I thought was true about my life was a lie. Not everything, I said, daring to place my hand on his chest, over his beating heart. You are real. Your protection of Sophia is real. What you feel, that is not a lie. He covered my hand with his. The touch was warm, rough, desperate. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. You should be in your safe apartment, wrapping Christmas presents, far from this nightmare. I chose to be here, I replied, holding his gaze. I chose the necklace. I chose to get in the car. I chose to come back for you in the tunnel. Dante looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Not the efficient assistant. Not the circumstantial victim. But a partner. Why did you come back? He asked, voice hoarse. Because I didn't want a world where you didn't exist, I admitted, the truth coming out before I could filter it. Dante let out a low sound, half sigh, half surrender. He pulled me to him, one hand wrapping around my waist, the other holding the nape of my neck. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was hungry, urgent, tasting of smoke and desperation. It was the kiss of two survivors clinging to the only clean thing in a dirty world. I interlaced my fingers in his hair, pulling him closer, wanting to erase the cold, the fear, the image of his father laughing on the phone. When we pulled apart, we were both panting, foreheads touching. If we get out of this alive, Elena, he murmured against my lips, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. Done, Sophia said, her cutting voice breaking the moment. We separated quickly, blushing like teenagers. Sophia was looking at the screen. A green progress bar was at 99%. The money is gone, she said, a cold smile curving her lips. I transferred everything to anonymous charity accounts around the world. Orphanages. Hospitals. Animal shelters. The Moretti Empire just funded world peace. And the project? Dante asked, regaining his composure. Deleted. The servers at St. Jerome are frying right now. Dante let out a sigh of relief. It's over. No money, no data, he has nothing. No, Lorenzo Russo spoke from his corner, voice trembling. You don't understand. Money doesn't matter to him now. He already has the army. The laptop emitted an alert sound. A new window opened automatically. It was a live stream. The image showed the ballroom at the top of Moretti Tower, in Manhattan. It was decorated for New Year's Eve. Gold, crystal, luxury. Waiters were finishing setting the tables. But in the center of the stage, there was something that didn't belong there. A huge glass capsule, filled with swirling silver gas. A caption appeared at the bottom of the screen, Countdown to New Year, 4 hours. Final phase, airborne vector release. What is that? I asked, feeling a new kind of horror. It's not an army of soldiers, Sophia whispered, eyes wide. That gas is an aerosol version of the serum. He doesn't want to create a platoon. He's going to infect New York's elite at the New Year's party. He's going to turn the most powerful people in the city into monsters under his control, Dante realized, horrified. In a single night, he takes control of the city. Lorenzo laughed, a hysterical sound. I told you. He is a god. You stole his money, but he's going to steal the world. Dante looked at the screen, at the party that would happen in the building bearing his name. Silas, Dante said, voice hardening into steel again. How many weapons do we have in the trunk? Enough to start a small war, boss. Dante looked at me, then at Sophia. We took his money. We took his data. Now let's take his stage. He grabbed his coat. "We're going to crash my own New Year's party." The clock on the dashboard of the stolen Ford read 10:45 p.m. We had a little over an hour before midnight. Before the gas capsule atop Moretti Tower opened and transformed New York's elite into obedient monsters, we left Lorenzo Russo tied to the pillar in the fishing shack. Silas made an anonymous call to the FBI from a disposable phone, reporting the location of a wanted kidnapper. The police would find Lorenzo nicely handcuffed, ready to confess. The trip to Manhattan was a nightmare of red brake lights. The city was clogged with revelers heading to Times Square. But Dante knew the city like the back of his hand. He avoided the main avenues, cutting through the meatpacking district and using service alleys most drivers didn't even know existed. Moretti Tower rose on Fifth Avenue, a needle of black glass and steel piercing the night sky, crowned by spotlights sweeping the snow clouds. We parked 3 blocks away, in a private underground garage ramp. Silas neutralized the booth guard with a quick chop to the carotid, leaving him sleeping peacefully in his chair. "Silas, open the trunk," Dante ordered. Silas's arsenal was no joke. There were tactical vests, smoke grenades, and compact carbines. "We can't go in there dressed like this," I pointed out, looking at our clothes soiled with mud, blood, and soot. "It's a black tie gala. We'll stand out like targets at a shooting range." "We're not going in through the front door," Dante said, putting a Kevlar vest over his torn shirt. He handed me one too. It was heavy and smelled of gun oil. "We're going in through the guts. I designed this building's ventilation system. There's an air intake entrance at basement level 3 that leads directly to the machine room, right above the ballroom. We have to climb 70 floors through a ventilation pipe?" I asked, incredulous. "No," Sophia intervened, voice calm as she checked a Glock pistol that looked too big for her pale hands. "We're going up via the freight elevator. I already hacked the building system. My father's biometric security system blocked Dante's access, but he forgot one thing." She touched her own eye. "Retina scanners recognize genetic patterns. My DNA is identical to the family's. And since I was declared dead, he never removed my profile from the old backup system." Dante looked at his sister with a mix of pride and sadness. "You are the skeleton key." The basement of Moretti Tower was a labyrinth of concrete and hissing pipes. We moved in tactical formation, Silas on point, Sophia and I in the middle, Dante in the rear. We reached the private freight elevator. The panel glowed with a threatening red light, restricted access security level 5. Sophia approached. She didn't use a keypad. She brought her face close to the optical scanner on the wall. A blue laser beam swept her eye. Beep. The light turned green. "Welcome, Ms. Moretti." The steel doors opened. We entered. The elevator smelled of ozone and metal. Dante pressed the button 70 penthouse/ballroom. The elevator began to rise. The sensation of gravity pushed us against the floor. When the doors opened, Dante said, checking the ammo in his gun, "There will be music, noise, and hundreds of civilians. My father will be protected by a Praetorian guard. Our priority is the capsule. Sophia, you go to the AV control panel, behind the stage. Try to override the launch sequence." "And us?" I asked, heart beating against the tight vest. "We're going to cause a distraction," Dante said, looking at me. "A big one." The elevator slowed down. 68, 69. 70, ding. The doors opened not to the ballroom, but to the catering area backstage. The smell of shrimp, expensive champagne, and strong perfumes invaded the elevator. Waiters hurried past with silver trays, so busy they took 3 seconds to notice the 4 armed and dirty people who had just exited the service elevator. "Move and you die," Silas growled, voice low but terrifying. The waiters froze, dropping trays. The sound of breaking glass was muffled by the loud music coming from the hall, an orchestra playing a Strauss waltz. "Stay here and be quiet," Dante ordered. We advanced through the backstage corridors, hiding behind heavy velvet curtains. We reached the side of the stage. The view was breathtaking and stomach-churning. The ballroom was an ocean of diamonds, tuxedos, and haute couture dresses. New York's elite danced, drank, and laughed under giant crystal chandeliers. And in the center of it all, on a raised podium where the orchestra played, was the capsule. It was bigger in person. A reinforced glass cylinder 10 feet high, filled with that hypnotic silver gas. It looked like a piece of modern art. Guests looked at it with curiosity, probably thinking it was some kind of special effect for the countdown. And there he was. Giuseppe Moretti. He was standing on a mezzanine balcony above the hall, observing the party like a Roman emperor watching games in the Colosseum. He wore an impeccable white tuxedo. His gray hair was combed back. He held a glass of champagne. He looked alive. Healthy. And absolutely evil. "There," Dante whispered, pointing to 4 men standing discreetly in the corners of the hall. They wore earpieces and ill-fitting suits. "Those aren't normal security. They are project mercenaries. Immortals. How do we kill something that doesn't die?" I asked. "We cut off the head," Dante replied, eyes fixed on his father. "Silas, take Sophia to the sound panel, under that balcony. Elena and I will go up." "Careful, boss," Silas said, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear on the giant's face. "That man on the balcony, he's never lost a negotiation." "Today he loses," Dante said. We split up. Silas and Sophia disappeared into the shadows under the mezzanine. Dante held my hand and pulled me toward a narrow spiral staircase leading to the technical lighting catwalk, high above the guests' heads. We climbed in silence. The heat from the spotlights was intense up there. We walked on the metal grate, 100 feet above the dance floor. When we reached a position directly above Giuseppe's balcony, Dante stopped. He looked down. His father was only 15 feet below us. Dante prepared to jump, to fall on his father and end it with his bare hands. But then, the music stopped. A sharp microphone sound echoed through the hall. All guests looked up, toward the balcony. Giuseppe Moretti tapped a fork on the crystal glass. Clink, clink, clink. "My dear friends," his voice echoed through the speakers, smooth and charismatic. "Thank you for coming to celebrate the future." He paused dramatically and, slowly, raised his head. Not to the crowd, but directly up. To the dark catwalk where we were hidden. He smiled. "And a special thanks," he continued, eyes locked on ours through the metal grates, "to my prodigal son, who was kind enough to join us from the rafters, like a rat." The hall lights changed abruptly. 4 powerful spotlights swiveled and focused on us, blinding us. The crowd gasped. A murmur of shock ran through the hall at seeing 2 armed and dirty figures hanging from the ceiling. "Dante!" I screamed. Before we could react, the access doors to the catwalk on both ends opened with a bang. From each side, 2 men advanced. They wore no masks. Their eyes were completely black. The veins in their necks pulsed with a silver liquid. They were the soldiers from the video. The monsters. "Kill them," Giuseppe ordered calmly into the microphone, as if asking for more wine. "But leave the girl alive. She has a necklace that belongs to me." Dante pushed me behind him, raising the carbine. "Elena," he shouted over the panicked screams of the crowd below. "Don't let them touch you. Aim for the head. It's the only chance." The soldiers advanced, running on the metal grate with inhuman speed. Dante opened fire. The sound of Dante's carbine shots was deafening in the confined space of the rafters, drowning out the screams of terror from the crowd below. Bang! 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 3 shots straight to the chest of the first immortal soldier. The impact was enough to stop a bull, but the man didn't even flinch. The silver liquid in his veins pulsed, black and viscous, and he continued running on the metal grate, hands outstretched like claws to reach us. The head! Dante roared, backing up. Aim for the head. I raised the pistol, my hands shaking so much the gun felt like it weighed a ton. The second soldier was coming from the other side of the catwalk, blocking our only exit. His face was a mask of empty fury, eyes black as oil wells. He lunged at me. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just pulled the trigger. The gun kicked violently against my palm. The shot hit the soldier's shoulder, spinning him around, but not dropping him. He growled, a guttural and wet sound, and launched himself again. Suddenly, Dante was there. He dropped the empty carbine and used his own body as a shield, crashing into the monster in midair. The impact was brutal. The metal of the catwalk groaned and buckled under the weight of the fight. Dante, a strong man, looked like a child against the supernatural strength of that thing. The soldier grabbed Dante's neck with one hand, lifting him off the floor, while the other hand prepared to pierce his chest. Dante! I screamed. I looked around, desperate. The spotlights blinded me. I saw a support hook for a giant crystal chandelier attached to the beam beside me. There was a thick safety rope coiled on a cleat. I dropped the gun and pulled the rope release lever. The counterweight released. The 2-ton crystal chandelier, hanging just below us, fell 10 feet before the rope jerked violently tight. The jolt caused the entire catwalk to tilt 45 degrees. The soldier, unbalanced, let go of Dante and slid down the inclined metal grate. He tried to grab the edge, but his tactical gloves found no purchase on the smooth steel. He fell. 100-foot free fall. His body hit the buffet table below with a sickening crash of breaking bones and china. Dante was hanging by one hand from a support beam. He looked at me, panting, blood dripping from his nose. Nice move, assistant, he grunted, swinging himself to climb back onto the unstable platform where I was holding on. But we had no time to celebrate. The other 3 soldiers were already climbing the structure, moving like spiders. And down below, Giuseppe Moretti laughed. Finish them, the patriarch's voice echoed through the speakers. And initiate the gas release. The show must go on. In the center of the hall, the glass capsule began to hiss. The silver gas inside swirled faster. We have to go down, Dante said, looking at the chandelier cable I had released. Now. He grabbed me by the waist with an iron arm. With the other hand, he wrapped around the thick steel cable. Hold on, he ordered. He jumped. The wind whistled in my ears. My stomach dropped. We slid down the cable, burning Dante's gloves, speeding past the shimmering crystals of the giant chandelier, until we landed with a heavy thud on top of an overturned banquet table. The ballroom was chaos incarnate. Millionaires screamed and trampled each other trying to reach the locked doors. Broken glass covered the floor like sharp snow. Dante pulled me behind a marble column. Silas. Situation. Dante shouted into the radio he had stolen from one of the guards in the tunnel. We are under the balcony, boss. Silas's voice came broken by shots. Sophia is at the panel, but the system is manually locked. The old man has a physical detonator. Dante looked up, toward the balcony. Giuseppe was there, serene in the midst of the storm, holding a small remote device in his left hand and the champagne glass in his right. 2 immortal soldiers flanked him. He has control, Dante said, checking the ammo in his pistol. Only 3 bullets remained. I have to get to him. It's suicide, I said, grabbing his arm. He has those monsters with him. Elena, Dante held my face with dirty hands. His look was intense, desperate. If that gas is released, everyone in this room dies or becomes a thing. Including you. I won't let that happen. He kissed me on the forehead, quick and strong. Stay here. Cover my back. He stepped out from behind the column, walking toward the open balcony in the middle of the empty dance floor. Father! Dante shouted, his voice overlapping the panic. Giuseppe looked down. He smiled, a smile of twisted pride. He made a sign, and the music, which had stopped, restarted. A slow, macabre waltz. Dante, Giuseppe said, voice amplified. Did you come for the final dance? Turn off the machine, Dante said, walking slowly, gun lowered at his side. You won. You have the power. You have their fear. You don't need to transform them. Oh, but I do, Giuseppe replied softly. Fear passes, son. Biological control is eternal. Besides, he looked at his wristwatch. 2 minutes to midnight. It would be rude to stop now. Suddenly, a scream came from under the balcony. Silas was thrown out of the sound booth like a rag doll. He landed on the dance floor, unconscious, bleeding from the head. An immortal soldier emerged from the shadows, dragging Sophia by her hair. Sophia! Dante shouted, raising his gun. But the soldier put a pistol to Sophia's temple. Giuseppe laughed. The choice is yours, Dante. Drop the gun, or your sister dies for the 2nd time. And this time, I guarantee there will be no resurrection. My heart stopped. Dante froze. He looked at his sister, then at his father. His hand trembled. Slowly, with agony in every movement, Dante knelt and placed the gun on the floor. Good boy, Giuseppe said. He descended the balcony stairs with the elegance of a king, followed by his monster guards. He walked to Dante, stopping in front of his kneeling son. I was hidden behind the column, holding the pistol Dante gave me. My breathing was shallow. I had an angle. I could shoot. But if I missed, Sophia would die. Dante would die. Stand up, Giuseppe ordered. Dante stood up. He was taller than his father, stronger, but in that moment he seemed diminished by the weight of betrayal. Where is it? Giuseppe asked, extending his hand. What? The necklace, Dante. The one your nosy assistant bought. Why do you want it? Dante growled. You already have the army. You already have the empire. Because it's mine, Giuseppe hissed, losing composure for a second. That medallion was the first gift I gave your mother. Before she discovered my ambitions and tried to flee with you. Before I had to silence her. Dante turned white. You killed Mom? It was a necessary accident. But she was wearing that necklace. And inside it. Giuseppe smiled, greedy. Inside it isn't just a chip with bank data, as Sophia thinks. There is a sample. The original sample of her blood. The only pure one. Without it, my serum degrades in months. My soldiers die. He brought his face close to Dante's. I need the necklace to maintain my immortality, son. Give it to me. Dante smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of blood and teeth. "I don't have it," Dante said. Giuseppe's eyes narrowed. He looked around, scanning the hall with his gaze, until stopping at the column where I was hidden. "Then she has it." Giuseppe snapped his fingers. The soldier holding Sophia shoved her violently to the floor and started walking toward me. "Elena, run!" Dante shouted, trying to attack his father, but being immediately immobilized by two other soldiers who held him by the arms, twisting them back. I stepped out from behind the column, pointing the gun at Giuseppe. "Tell them to stop," I screamed, voice high. "Or I shoot." Giuseppe looked at me. He didn't look scared. He looked amused. "You don't have the guts, girl," he said. He raised the remote detonator. His thumb hovered over the red button. "If you shoot me," my finger spasms and presses the button. The gas is released instantly. Everyone dies. He extended his other hand. "Give me the necklace, Elena. And I let you live. I let Dante live. You can take him and leave. I just want my legacy." I looked at Dante. He was struggling against the guards, shouting for me not to do it. I looked at Sophia, fallen on the floor, crying. I looked at the hissing capsule. 30 seconds to midnight. I brought my hand to my pocket. Felt the cold metal of the medallion. If I gave it to him, he would have eternal power. If I didn't, he kills us all now. "Promise," I said, voice trembling. "Promise you let Dante go." "Elena, no." Dante roared. "You have my word as a gentleman," Giuseppe said, smiling like the snake he was. I walked slowly to the middle of the dance floor. The ground trembled beneath my feet. I took the medallion from my pocket. The silver shone under the lights of the broken chandelier. Giuseppe advanced, eyes shining with greed. He lowered his hand slightly from the detonator to take the necklace. I extended my arm. When his fingers grazed the silver, I didn't let go. Instead, I looked at Dante. And I saw that he had stopped fighting. He was looking at me, and he understood. He saw the position of my finger on the trigger of the pistol I held hidden behind my back in the other hand. "Happy New Year, Mr. Moretti," I whispered. And then, I did the only thing he didn't expect. I didn't shoot him. I shot the giant glass capsule behind him. The shot didn't sound like a gunshot, it sounded like the end of the world. The bullet pierced the reinforced glass of the capsule with surgical precision. For a split second, a spiderweb of cracks covered the cylinder. And then, under the immense pressure of the compressed gas, the capsule exploded. Kaboom! The force of the explosion threw me backward. I hit my back on the marble floor, the air knocked out of my lungs, while a rain of glass shards fell over the ballroom. But the glass was the least of Giuseppe's problems. He was standing directly in front of the capsule. When it burst, he wasn't hit by a cloud of aerosol gas. He was hit by a solid wall of concentrated silver liquid. Tons of that chemical mutagen, undiluted, washed over him completely. His scream was inhuman. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was the sound of a biology being violently rewritten in real time. Giuseppe fell to his knees, clawing at his face as his skin began to bubble and turn gray. His veins popped out, pulsing with a black glow. "Elena!" Strong hands grabbed me by the shoulders, pulling me up. Dante. He had used the chaos to free himself from the guards, who were now retreating, confused, seeing their master come undone. "We have to get out of here," Dante shouted, pulling me away from the stage, where a pool of toxic mercury was spreading. "The concentration is too high. The ventilation system can't disperse this, it will burn everything it touches." "Your father." I pointed, horrified. On the stage, Giuseppe rose. But it was no longer Giuseppe. He had grown. The white tuxedo had torn under muscles that swelled grotesquely. His eyes were gone, replaced by black sockets. He was an abomination of flesh and silver. An overdose of immortality. The creature roared and looked at us. There was no longer intelligence, only hunger and fury. He jumped from the stage, landing on the dance floor and cracking the ground. Run! Dante pushed me toward the emergency exit. Not without Sophia! I screamed. We looked to the corner of the hall. Sophia was standing, beside Silas's unconscious body. The two remaining immortal soldiers were advancing toward her, confused without Giuseppe's orders, acting on pure predatory instinct. Dante hesitated only a second. He looked at the pistol in my hand, the one I hadn't fired at his father. "Give me the gun," he said. I handed it to him. There were only 2 bullets. "Go help Silas," he ordered. "I'll distract the thing." Dante turned and ran toward the monster that had been his father. He shouted, attracting the beast's attention. "Hey! I'm here. Your prodigal son." The thing roared and charged at Dante, knocking over tables and chairs. Dante slid under a table, firing once at the monster's knee. The shot only slowed him down. The creature grabbed a marble column and ripped out a chunk, throwing it at Dante. Meanwhile, I ran to Sophia. She was in a trance, staring at the approaching soldiers. "Sophia!" I shook her. "We have to go." She looked at me. Her eyes shone with that frightening lucidity. "They don't know what to do," she whispered. "The command signal is gone. They are looking for a new voice." She let go of me and took a step forward, toward the monsters. "Sophia, no." She raised her hand. "Stop." Her voice wasn't a scream, it was a command that seemed to vibrate in my bones. The 2 soldiers stopped instantly, like puppets with cut strings. Sophia was the key. Her blood, her brain, was the source. "Protect my brother," she ordered, pointing to the center of the hall. The 2 soldiers turned and ran toward the beast Giuseppe, throwing themselves at him in a suicidal fury. That gave Dante the opening he needed. While the soldiers distracted the abomination, Dante climbed the wreckage of the fallen chandelier. He jumped onto the monster's back. Giuseppe struggled, crushing one of the soldiers with a blow, but Dante held on. He pressed the barrel of the pistol to the base of the creature's skull, where the silver liquid pulsed strongest. "Family is eternal," Dante whispered, repeating his father's motto bitterly. "But you aren't." Bang! The last shot. The creature stiffened. The silver glow in the veins went out. And then, like a sand statue hit by a wave, the body collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. Silence fell over the destroyed hall. Outside, midnight arrived. Church bells began to ring. The sky lit up with colorful fireworks, red, green, gold, reflecting in the broken glass of Moretti Tower. Dante stood up slowly from atop the body. He was covered in blood and dust. He looked at his empty hands. His father was dead. This time, for real. I ran to him, ignoring the glass on the floor. He caught me in his arms, burying his face in my neck, shaking violently. "It's over," I whispered, stroking his soot-stained hair. "It's over, Dante." Silas, who had woken up, approached limping, supported by Sophia. We stood there, 4 survivors in the middle of the ruins of an empire, watching New York celebrate a new year that almost didn't happen. Dante pulled away a little and looked at me. He reached into the torn pocket of his vest and took out something he had picked up from the floor during the fight. The silver medallion. It was dented, stained black, but the wolf still held at the moon. "I think this belongs to you," he said, voice hoarse, trying to smile. "Consider it a late Christmas bonus." I closed my hand over the necklace and over his hand. "I don't want a bonus," I replied. "I want a vacation. A very long vacation." Epilogue. 6 months later, the sun of Tuscany was different from the sun of New York. It was golden, lazy, and smelled of cypress trees and warm grapes. I was sitting on the terrace of an old villa, restored with honey-colored stone, looking at the endless hills. My laptop was open on the table, but instead of executive schedules and corporate mergers, the screen showed the catalog of a small art gallery I was planning to open in the neighboring village. "Coffee is ready." Dante came out the glass door, bringing 2 cups. He wore a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, and khaki pants. His hair was a little longer, tousled by the wind. He no longer looked like the armored CEO who terrorized boardrooms. The shadows under his eyes had disappeared. When he smiled at me, it was a real smile. With teeth and dimples. "Thank you," I said, accepting the coffee. "Sophia called," he said, sitting next to me and putting his arm around my shoulders. "She and Silas are in Switzerland. The doctors say the detox of her system is almost complete." She asked when we are going to visit them. "Soon," I replied. "As soon as the grapes are harvested." Moretti Industries had been dissolved. The toxic gas scandal at New Year's was covered up by the government as a failed terrorist attack, but the company's assets were quietly liquidated. Dante donated most of the fortune, keeping only enough to ensure we never needed to look at a stock chart again. Russo Corp went bankrupt. Lorenzo was in a maximum security federal prison, and would probably never see the light of day again. Dante touched my neck. The silver necklace was there, polished and shiny, resting on my tan skin. The chip had been destroyed, but the medallion remained. "Do you still have nightmares?" he asked softly, thumb stroking the silver wolf. "Sometimes," I admitted. "And you?" "Sometimes," he agreed. He kissed my temple. "But then I wake up, and you are there. And the world is just world. No monsters. No conspiracies. Just us." I turned to him, placing the cup on the table. I looked at the man who had gone to hell and back, and who had taken me with him, just so we could find heaven together. "You know," I said, playing with the buttons of his shirt, "I think that thrift store on 42nd Street was the best deal you ever made." Dante laughed, a free and light sound that scared some birds in the olive trees. $10, he murmured, bringing his lips close to mine. "The best investment in history." He kissed me under the Tuscan sun, and for the first time in a long time, time stopped. There were no deadlines. There was no danger. There was only the taste of coffee, the warmth of the sun, and the promise of a life that, finally, belonged to us. The end.